Hello, everyone. I'm Ekaterina from Ketchapp, and today I'm going to talk about cognitive biases in hypercasual. So every day, our attention is solicited by so many different signals coming from our friends, family, social media, some advertisement, and our brain, which has a limited capacity of perception, needs to choose how to react to all of those signals in a limited amount of time using least amount of energy possible. And that makes our brain to commit some psychological errors, some thinking errors. And those errors are called cognitive biases. So why should we actually care about them? Well, that's because they are already highly used in hypercasual. From user acquisition stage to in-game to monetization, they are used literally everywhere. And we're going to talk about all of those three right now. And we'll start with cognitive biases in user acquisition. First of all, you should always remember that your game idea is as important as your user acquisition campaign, of course. So don't hesitate to apply the advices in this chapter to your ideation phase as well. And secondly, of course, all of those biases, they are not limited to only UA. You can definitely use them in-game or monetization. That will work. And our first bias is the mere exposure bias. So it says that people tend to prefer something they're already familiar with. And that translates into the question about relatability in hypercasual. So it's not a secret for you that the user will click actually on the video if there's already something he's familiar with on it. And that's actually a hypothesis which was indeed proved by the experiment we ran in Ketchapp, which was stating that 90% of all of the games we tested, which had interesting CPIs, were based on one of the three things. Either it's a universally understandable concept, either it's something, an everyday situation, for example, or a social media trend. So be sure to systematically add one of those in your game. And the next bias is called the bandwagon effect. So, and also it can be known as herd mentality. So that means that we tend to adopt certain behavior if others are already doing so. And nowadays we are in a unique situation when people are consuming a lot of mainstream content simultaneously on quite a few different platforms, actually, like Netflix, TikTok, YouTube. And well, that leads to the fact that millions of people share the same references simultaneously. And of course, this digital buzz plus the pressure to conform leads to the fact that a lot of trends can have a really snowballing effect. And of course, publishers and developers would like to surf on that. And this is why we have so many games about Poppy Playtime, or for example, like Milk Crate Challenge, etc. So, but for your game, it's not enough to be just relatable and trendy, because, well, those two biases, as you can guess, they lead to certain uniformization of a market. A lot of games start to look the same, and you want to distinguish from a competition. And those next two biases will help you with that. So first one is called isolation effect. And it says that people which are confronted with a series of different signals tend to remember best the ones which differ the most from the rest. And the second effect, bizarreness effect, states that we tend to remember better weird things. And well, in hypercasual, we can translate it into the need of your game to be fresh and create a wow effect from your audience. How to do so? Well, of course, we should target emotions. Remember, in attention economy, the worst thing which can happen to your game, it's the user being indifferent to it. Of course, it's a good idea to target good emotions. You can show something pleasant, like in SMR games, to your users, or add some humor and maybe something pleasant. However, let's be honest, the market has its preference. The things which works the best, it's everything connected to 7 deadly sins. Everything which is hypersexualized, gore, cringy works the best. And we have a couple examples on this one. So first of all, we have Gun Action, which had really good CPI thanks to its gore, bloody explosions. Next, we have Fat to Fit. The game probably you already know. And it gained popularity thanks to this hypersexualized, goofy animation. And because of that, it got banned from App Store as well. And then we have Merge Animals, which really stands out from a crowd because it has like this morphing animation of human and animal, which really feels like somehow unsettling, but catches your attention still. Next bias is the illusory superiority, and that's probably the one which is leveraged the most in user acquisition. So according to this bias, people actually tend to overestimate themselves, and they think that they are smarter than the average. And this is the reason why fail videos and taunting taglines work so well. And you probably all know these videos, and the best way to trigger this bias for your audience is to show them a video where the simplest problem ever is not solved, basically. And you can also add a disclaimer saying only 1% of players can do that. So the player instantly feels the pressure to download the game because he wants indeed to prove to himself that he's very, very smart, and to get rid of the frustration he gained from watching this problem unsolved. So we move further to cognitive biases in gameplay, and here they have a really big potential to boost your retention and playtime. Let's see how it works. First is peak and end effect. According to this effect, people tend to evaluate the overall experience just by few moments, for few peak moments, and the ending of it. So that means that if the overall experience was so-so, it still can be remembered as something very positive, very cool, thanks to an epic ending, for example. And we have a couple of examples as well on this one. I think the best illustration is the evolution of run genre and the end of the level mechanics, like we can see here. So, for example, in Battery Run, we see that the gameplay is quite classic, actually. But the whole fun starts when we cross the finish line, and we are exposed to those juicy, cool, diverse mechanics, which are so cool to interact with. But it's not necessary to wait until the end of a level. It's actually better to have multiple peak moments during your level. And that's typically what happens in Invincible Hero here, where we have this fever mode. The player is looking at the bar, failing constantly, and he looks forward to it and finally gets rewarded by this cool explosion. So the player gets a constant small goal to work towards, and also at the same time he gets rewarded for it. So it's like small loop of expectation and reward. And you can take it even one step further, like we did in Flippy Race, where every jump is so nervous, so exciting. So, and there are multiple peaks like that inside of a level. So the player feels excited, and so he comes back to the game to experience it again and again. And that's probably the reason why this game has day 14 retention of 15% 4 years after its release. Next effect is the placebo effect. You probably all know it. Typically it says that people tend to believe that the feature has a certain effect, and if they believe it, they feel it, even if the effect it doesn't exist at all. And traditionally, we were using it in hyper-casual mostly to create a sensation from a player that he's playing against others by adding bots, for example, in IO games. But nowadays, the most interesting application of this one would be placebo stats. What is it about? So, as everyone mentioned today, hyper-casual games are becoming deeper, and that means that the meta is becoming more complex, and we use a lot of stats. Stats are great at creating the sense of progression for your player. So, but they are really tricky to balance in your game. This is why you might want to add some placebo stats, which don't really have any significant effect on your gameplay. And all of those free games have it. So But you should be very careful, because if your player discovers actually that there is no effect of that, well, he'll be disappointed. And there are a couple of tricks how you can avoid it. So first of all, you can apply a logarithmic progression to your upgrades. So which means that first two upgrades will have a significant effect on gameplay, and all of the others will have lesser and lesser one. Or you can do like in Drive Heals, where we can see that developers attached actually a visual change to any upgrade, which allows the player to feel how his car is getting shinier, bigger, etc. But there's no real big impact on the gameplay. And now, after seeing how to boost retention, we will have a look at how we can leverage even further with sunk cost fallacy. And according to this fallacy, people, if they invested a lot of time into something, they are really unlikely to abandon it. And this is great, because you should remind your player all the time of what he achieved in your game already. So that's what we did, for example, in Crowd Defense, where we implemented a map, the world map, which illustrates the journey the user made so far in your game. And also at the same time, it's very powerful at teasing the upcoming content. You can also have a collection in your game, for example, which shows the player what he already unlocked and pushes him to complete it. However, this feature works for only for most engaged players. Or you can level up and do like in My Little Universe, for example, where the player literally feels like he's building his own planet. So we are moving to the chapter about monetization. And here, the main use of those biases is that we can influence a lot the value perception of some items in our shops, etc. So, for example, the first one called effort justification bias. And according to that, actually, people like things more when they invested some time, some effort into them. And it's also called the IKEA effect. So this is probably why you like your IKEA furniture so much. You assembled it yourself. That's typically what happens in hypercasual, and this is the reason behind the success of Fieldbox. It's a monetization feature which you can see almost in any game in hypercasual, where we have a certain percentage of an item getting unblocked after every level. And the user is actually tempted by that, because he sees how he works towards obtaining this item, and therefore he allocates a higher value to it, rather than, for example, this feature would be presented to him in the shop or a random gift. Next bias is saying that basically people love to, they don't like to refuse stuff, and they also value items with which they already have some experience. And that means that all the trial offers are usually very effective. Why? Well, because people get used to owning something, and they are reluctant to let it go. And that's exactly what happens in Flippy Race when we suggest a player to try a rocket ship. And after the end of trial period, he can acquire it with some hard currency. And we have noticed that actually the player is more likely to pay a higher price for it if you already played with an item, rather than, for example, just seeing it in the shop. Next is the loss aversion. So people don't like to lose stuff, and that they also feel a lot the sensation of loss, even higher than the sensation of happiness from, for example, obtaining something similar. And also it can be called the fear of missing out, or FOMO, probably the feeling, at least the feeling which every one of us experienced at least one time in their life. And we can definitely integrate it in your game. First of all, you can start with the UI, which will guiltify the player, which will make him feel that he's losing something. So just replace the cancel button with lose it. and the player will be nudged to watch the rewarded video because, well, he has a sensation that he's losing something. He'll try to avoid it at all costs. Or you can go even one step further and do like developers of Craft Island did, for example, where you are presented with an opportunity to adopt a cat or to let it die. That's very cruel. Or also you can add some limited time opportunities in your game. Of course, time limits should be used with parsimony in hyper-casual. However, here it's very useful because we present an opportunity to a player to get a power up, for example, during a peak moment, which lasts only like for several seconds, and the player will feel urged to actually watch an RV because he doesn't want to miss out on this opportunity, and because he doesn't know when will be the next time he gets it again. And our last bias is a price value effect. And, well, if people think something is expensive, they tend to value it more. We think it's better. And, of course, it applies to your in-game shop as well. So, for example, here, in Invincible Hero, just by scrolling through the shop, we can already feel how the value raises. And all of a sudden, a skin which costs 7 rewarded videos doesn't feel so expensive. Or you can do, for example, like a Stealth Master, where here we are presented with an option to choose a weapon, but without watching an ad, you can choose only the most boring one. And of course, the coolest weapon is legendary, and it requires a rewarded video. So you can add those classification by rarity level in order to highlight the items, to emphasize their rarity, and to make them more desirable for your player. And in the final part of my presentation, I'll try to give you some inspiration. So now, after we realized how the psychology of players actually work, and saw some best examples from the industry, I would like to encourage you to be creative, to innovate, and try to mix different stuff. Because, as you know, hyper-casual is driven by innovation, and you can think about some custom feature which will fit exactly your gameplay and help you to engage your players and maximize your LTV. And we have some really cool examples here. So, for example, here in Merge Animals, we are presented with an opportunity to watch a rewarded video to play with a leopard. But you'll get a leopard anyways, even if you don't watch an ad, you'll still get it. So it's absolutely placebo. And you think that you'll lose it if you don't watch. Next, in Save a Town, we are really nudged to save Sarah. First of all, she's more expensive. And also it makes us reluctant to lose such a valuable person. The final one combines all the three, so and pretty weird one. So here we have Kanye West, a universally recognizable character who participates in the Frozen Honey Challenge from TikTok with a very, very weird twist, as you can see here. And that actually reminds us that we are working in the very, very bizarre and creative industry at the same time. So yeah, I hope that you learned a lot of new stuff. You managed to systematize stuff which you already learned and got some inspiration. Thank you very much.